Oh, I'm sorry, my presence isn't there. I'm really thankful so much to Jory and Mari and to Adam for making this possible. So I'm just, like I said, I'm sorry I couldn't be there. We love the opportunity to be in these kind of conversations about cultural and creative work and community building. And so I really am looking forward to the opportunity to be able to make some deeper connections with the cultural and creative community in Providence. We partner along in the work we're doing with Roger Williams. And then other than that, I'm just available to answer questions.
Does anyone have any questions? Things that you're not doing well? So Carol, where do you see sort of the next step for Ashe?
Well, we're really completing a cycle of like birth and kind of merging. And so I think the rest of what we've got to do now, and certainly I see the rest of what I have to do as a co-founder, is to strengthen the roots of the organization, the infrastructure of the organization, and to really be able to grapple with this sustainability, and also the whole notion of clarifying the brand of our work so that it's really easy to continue to do it as it goes on. I think that the dynamic quality of working with community in the creative process in an intimate way is something that can't be like captured in a formula, but there is a way to be able to essentially create a way in which people become capable at being able to do that. So we're really kind of building the strength of the organization, strengthening partnerships, and certainly doing a lot of work in the Central City area of New Orleans to continue to evolve the development of that community post-disaster.
Great. Thank you, Carol.
Thanks, Carol.
We have a question.
Hi, Carol.
Hello. Hello, I'm imagining you in my mind.
Adam in his presentation talked a lot about your background in public health and social service before founding Ashe. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about how your experience in that sector informs the programming and kind of theory of change and the work that you do at Ashe now.
Sure. I think that in a certain way, the kind of my work world before Ashe was really about completing my preparation. I worked for over 20 years in the public sector, in education, in substance abuse planning and programming, and then finally in public health. On human service planning and program development. And a lot of that planning work was really about this whole notion of, determining where needs were and then building ways in which you responded to the need. And so as time went on, the process of doing that became something that you just were able to do from a place of what was a good strategy, what was a good model. And by the time you combined your observations, the data, and some survey of what was going on in the rest of the world, you pretty much had an idea of where to start with trying to create what you wanted to create. Work really kind of helped me to really understand like where and how the aches term for human beings, and it also gave me some idea about spontaneity. And because I was working at a time when there was a lot of vitality around the issues of working with community, collaboration, capacity building for the community, and leadership development there. I think that all of that really kind of combined to kind of complete my my insight and my capacity, so that when I got to the point of meeting Doug and us thinking about trying to do this project called Ashe, that I had an idea about how to start, at least, crafting the bigger agenda than just making art. And so this whole Arts for Life philosophy that we have, the way of making art serve the purpose of kind of generating the contemporary culture, and also being able to be an assistance to the problem solving and the growth and development that people just have to do to exist and to continue to thrive.
Hello, Carol.
Yes.
It's Elmo Terry Morgan from Rights and Reason Theater.
Yes, how are you?
I'm fine, darling. How are you? We met last year, right?
Yes, I don't have to imagine you. I can remember you.
Okay. But I just wanted to bring up, for this group that's here, that we have some natural connections, that your development person, James Borders, is a Brown University graduate, and he was a founder of Rights and Reason. And that also here in the room is Brenda Marie Osby.
Hello, Brenda.
So we've got some New Orleans in the room. Okay. So Carol, and I was looking at the PowerPoint, and we had this conversation, and we talk about all the great things that Ashe does, and that the various organizations that are represented here do. But we talk about, that ongoing work to get money. We always talk about capacity building, but that means you gotta have money. So these wonderful things don't happen because we go out and shake that tree. We out there with a shovel trying to find the treasure chest. So would you mind talking about how you've been able to make all of this happen, and how you have been able to gather money, funds to make resources?
Well, it begins a little bit with our mission, that there really is more resources in the philanthropic world, and probably also in the governmental world, for community development and social services. And because our mission grounds us in community development work that is served by the creative and the cultural lens, we have had, our biggest funders have been folks who funded us for our community development work, not for the art that we created. That was just the way that we did the work. Yeah. And that continues to be something that works for us. And the facility with being able to combine the focus of art making, and as well as the focus of being able to have the art making serve the purpose of community development. It's something that we it's something that we continue to do. And having such a fabulous development person who can kind of take these concepts and ideas and kind of create them on paper in a way that people can see not just what we're attempting, but how it connects. I think it's the thing that has really worked for us. That, and having been, we were still standing when the disaster happened, and that is another feature inside of what has worked well for us.
Wow, thank you. And get well soon.
Can I ask a follow-up? Are there times when this, the community development money, this non-arts funding, ever conflicts with the artistic goals of Ashe?
Need somebody to repeat that question for me.
Are there times, Carol, where the community development funding conflicts with the goals or mission of Ashe?
So far, we've really been able to be really very clear about, what we're doing and, why we're doing it. And we've not really suffered. The biggest issue that I think that comes close to being something that really pinches us a bit is that though we have lots of space, that there's never enough space to do all the things that people want to do. And so I think to the extent of being able to do 2 weekend and 3 weekend runs of theater, we do a lot of our performances off premises. And so that helps us out in that regard. And so I would think it's just in terms of how the community uses the space, which is that they can use it all day long, every day. And the notion of being able to carve out the space and the time when if we're just doing art. So, so that would be one of the ways that I think that there winds up being a tension.
I know for College Unbound, workforce development is a phrase that I shudder at normally. But when I think about what it means to base something like that at a cultural arts center like Ashe, I see the radical potential in using that language and having access to those kinds of funds. Right? That if it's Ashe creating a space to both train and complement its current and next generation of leaders for the organization, that to me becomes a useful use of workforce development. Where traditionally I don't want anything to do with that kind of language or community or pocket.
Well, and one of the students.
Well, I think that part of why we did Ashe College Unbound is because a lot of the people around us who had great leadership skills were 1.5 years, 2.5 years, sometimes 3 years into college degrees that had not completed. And we know that as they get older and accumulate more responsibility, it becomes harder to get back to that agenda. So really, this was one of the places where we could see that if we could create a window of opportunity that could take that kind of path and then create a way to complete degrees, for instance. Because as talented as there are some things that they will not be able to compete for. So that's one of the ways. The other is just the day-to-day building of capacity in running a facility, maintaining the facility, and all of the things that go along with it. One of Doug's big interests when we got started was the whole notion having the keys to a place. We didn't have to ask permission to use. That we spent a lot of time begging, borrowing, and stealing space. So the whole notion of being able to have a space, own a space, and learning to do all of the things that go along with that. Being able to get at these other tables, the tables where tax incentives and tax credits and these conversations that never make it down to the community. Or if they do, we're not in a circumstance where we're able to take advantage of them. Learning about and being able to access capital resources from the state. And so I think that the knowledge base, like expanding the knowledge base about how things hook together and how you have access to resources is one of the things. And as we learn, we're talking about it and wanting to let other people know about it as well. And so I think that the notion of capacity building and workforce development, I think are really some, we've got 85 folks every year between artists, folks who work with us, and contractors who are working and also learning more and more how to manage, be able to successfully operate a small to medium-sized community-based facility. And as the industries are continuing to come, the theater and movie industry, we're hoping that this will assist some of these folks in being able to get some piece of that work, because we're not getting a lot of it.
Hi, Carol. My name is Nehesayu, and Micah and Jory asked me to come and moderate the panel, so I'd love to take this opportunity to introduce Dorothy Jungles and Elmo Terry Morgan, who are here with us this evening, and we're able to listen to Adam's presentation. And it's great that they're here because they are organizations also involved in community-based art making and have some interesting connections with the story circle method, or creating a gathering space for circles. And it's also apropos that we're here at the Roots Cafe, because these are two organizations with very long roots here in Providence. So I'd love to open up the conversation and invite Dorothy and Elmo to share with us. I know earlier, Dorothy, if you could share with this audience a little bit about your current project and its connection to the gathering of stories, and Elmo, if you want to speak about Profiles and Shadows or any other project, so that this audience and Carol can also, benefit from this conversation, this cross-fertilization of ideas. Thank you.
All right. Well, our current project is called Brainstorm, and we took it on. A lot of it had to do with a lot of the young people that have been our school and eventually our company and our colleagues, and understanding the problems that come from different things that we suffer in our brains, like ADHD is one of them. We have seen post-traumatic stress. In fact, what we found out as we studied the brain more, that there's more people in prison, there's more children that suffer from post-traumatic stress than all of the vets coming back from Iraq. That these brain injuries from traumatic events and poverty and the things that happen. So we were very interested in learning more about the brain and what the latest findings are and how people are looking at that. And she went on to say that in prison there was more people undiagnosed with post-traumatic stress and many problems that just have not been looked at, and calling people criminals versus saying that they need treatment and need help. So we were very interested in what we could learn, and one of the things we're going to be doing a big piece, it'll open in January, but meanwhile we did these brain cafes once a month. And what we did is we decided we would bring someone from the medical and sciences, neuroscience, and so on, and our audience who had problems that they wanted to talk about, and we would, as artists, create something with the story. What surprised us is we were approached by people in our community. We were approached by a woman whose daughter had a stroke the day before she was to graduate from Smith College. And she's now locked in. They found that she could move one eye. For a while they didn't even think that they should save her life. So she came and said, tell our story. She said, I want you to tell our story. I want you to tell Maggie's story. So that's the kind of thing that happened, and we told it, and she brought Maggie there, and there was someone from Brown University who is in the latest things in the neuroscience is they are working with people, and their thoughts are able now to control computers. So these are wonderful findings that we didn't know about, the community didn't know about, and we had a lot of people come to the theater that hadn't been at the theater before, from medicine or because of injuries that they wanted to learn more about. And the woman gave us her story, and we did an 8-minute telling of it. And we had someone else call us with Tourette's syndrome, who had, she was in Philadelphia, and she'd seen the Brain Cafe, and she said, well, I'd really like to make a dance using my my Tourette's moves, and couldn't you do that? So both of these offers were like, they were ones that when they were first came, they were like, well, what are we going to do with this? This is going to be disastrous, how are we going to do this? But the woman with the Tourette's, a young woman, a vivacious, absolutely beautiful young woman with dance training, tremendous sense of humor, came and spent 2 weeks with us. And then we went on YouTube and we looked for other people that had Tourette's, that had these different kinds of moves. And we actually, it was in a waltz, Prokofiev's waltz, we put it in. So we used real waltz movements and mixed with sounds and movements from Tourette's. And then we told the story of Tourette and when the disorder was first recognized and what was done and what was not done, with Professor Charcot. So we had about 11 minutes that night, and then we had post-traumatic stress, people with their stories of, having experienced something. One teacher who witnessed a killing in the school, and she couldn't teach after that. She actually just quit teaching. And she told her story. And then now the next one in November is a man who has asked that we do something on schizophrenia. And he's a very, very high functioning with schizophrenia, but we have, that's what is going to be our next thing. So that's our recent project.
Oh, me, okay. This is Elmo Terry Morgan. I've been deep into archiving process this past year. We'll talk about that later. So because of that, I just want to say this is Saturday, October 15, the year 2011. We're at Roots Cafe on Westminster Street in downtown Providence, Rhode Island. Trust me, I've been going through tons of videotapes, and you'd be surprised some people do not let you know when it was done. So I want to acknowledge this space. I also want to acknowledge that this was once the home of the Providence Black Repertory Company. And I really want to thank Lynn and people who think like him and his partners and friends who came and preserved this as a community space. And already our brains are ticking, and we're actually tapping into the Ashe model to say that we have a lot of resources in our larger community that we really have not, I don't like the term network, it sounds like corporate America, but net weaving. Dorothy, who's next to me, we have been knowing of each other for years, but we never sat down and talked. It makes no sense at all. And when she was just talking about her project, the one that I will talk about briefly, because there are lots of issues and lots of things that happen when you're working within academia. I won't go into all of them, but somehow people think because Rights and Reason Theater is a program of the Africana Studies Department in Brown, that because it's Brown, that we're just rolling in money. And we are not. We are under-resourced, have been under-resourced since our founding 41 years ago. But we hang in there, so part of maintaining these viable institutions in the communities requires dedicated people who believe in it, who through hell and high water will hang in there and fight the righteous fight, and you fight to hold on, and you do what you got to do whenever you need to do it. So if you want to know more about what we do and Rights and Reason, I'll just give you this as a caveat. Go to Brown University website, look up Africana Studies, and you'll find out all about us. But what I want to talk to you briefly in terms of the work that we have done, and it's based upon resources, but usually people from the community when I say the community, and when George Houston Bass Funding Rights Committee, they said we must think of Brown University as part of the community and not outside of it. So the whole concept, so people will come to us, and sometimes it's interns, professors, and students, and then a lot of times people who do not work at Brown or even attend Brown will come to us because they feel that free and say there is an issue, there's a problem, and we need your help. And can you wield some of the resources that Brown does have to help us out? And I'm going to preface the short story about a project we did called Heart to Heart, 8-Year Life Worth Saving. A play that I wrote in 1999, and then we did it again in 2003 in Durham, North Carolina, at North Carolina Central University, which is a HBCU. My regret is that you get a good project, and this was a project that literally, and we had documentation that saved the lives of women of African descent. And went beyond, because men started looking at the place of, wait a minute, I'm going to get my heart checked out. But then the money runs out, or it's not the hot issue of the moment. And you're like, well, damn, you know, just because we did the play in 99 and 2003 doesn't mean Stroking Heart is ended. And there's a whole generation coming up that doesn't have the information that we had in that play. Well, I said we did the first incarnation of this play in 99, but it really started in 96. Literally, I was in the conference room, and this black woman walks in, I'd never seen her before, and she was working with a minority task force of the American Heart Association, Rhode Island chapter. And she just came in and said, black women are dying from heart disease and stroke, and the PSAs are not working. We've heard that you do this thing about RPM, some kind of research thing you do. You know, we said, well, give us information and we'll get on it. So she said, okay, I'll get back with you. Well, 3 years passed, literally 3 years. She came back, and she came back with the folks from the Rhode Island chapter of the American Heart Association and representatives from our local lifespan hospitals. And they said, we want to make this happen. We said, okay. So that meant, all right, what's the research base? So that group, you know, between the AMHeart, Rhode Island, and Lifespan, they commissioned me, because I'm a playwright, to write this play, and they give me like boxes of research. And I said, this is impossible. But they created a focus group, and we sat in a circle just like this of black women who had survived stroke and heart disease. There were healthcare workers, doctors, nurses, all those kind of people, and people who provided like this we call human resources. And we got so many stories that were coming at us that we did not even imagine. And as I kept getting bombarded with all these stories and heartbreaking stories, I realized that I had to go back to the focus. We got to change the focus. It cannot be about black women anymore. I said, but given the demographics of our area in which we live, you've got to say women of African descent. Because you have women who are black from my culture, but don't call themselves black for various reasons. They will use other terminology. And we said, if they only hear black, let's say that doesn't mean me. And it does mean them. And then we learned stuff, you know, so this is, we had to deal with the social issues of people who were, and there was the medical side. Let me deal with that first. The medical issue. There were things that we found that in certain languages, there were conditions that didn't translate. Hypertension, in certain languages, didn't translate. We found that women can experience a heart attack with symptoms unlike men. And the women told us, one woman said, I was walking to my car and I just stopped. I was frozen in my tracks, and I didn't know what happened. So I had to get all of that going. We had women of African descent who said, I would go for help, but I might get deported. So this was, Carol, you should have seen me trying to write this play. So we started the focus group in December '98. We're supposed to have the first meeting of the play in June of '99. And we're meeting on a monthly basis. It comes May, and I gave up. I said, I was going to turn the check in. I said, this is not possible. So I called my friend, Marshall West, who was the director, a long-term friend, who's now passed on. And I was so angry. And she said, I said, Marcia, you can't write this. Nobody can write it. It's too big. There's too much going on. She said, what's the problem? I said, I'm mad. She said, why? I said, because it seems like the only thing black people are at high risk, who are at high risk for, poverty, bad times, bad health. It was all bad. She said, but then get mad because we're mad. That turned it around. It was the focus group that kept me going. I went back with them, and they said, you think you just, I'm dragging a leg. And I said, I said, got it. But that focus group stayed with us. I mean, we did a reading, and then we started doing some of the stage work, and then they got so into it because they started hearing parts of their life stories. Issues that they have been going through and what they wanted to teach to other women. And even they got into the artistic side, because they said, that character should have a purple dress. She should have that. And when we finally did it and they saw the purple dress, they went, I told them that. But what we also ended up doing with this, and this grew out of one woman coming to us, what was associated with the performances. We did 10 performances locally in Rhode Island. We performed at schools, the community centers, churches, and in the Rites of Rhythm tradition, we took the real theater to the people because we realized there were people who were going to come see the play who had never seen a play. And George Bassett taught us, don't go out there with a curtain and a milk crate to the people. We took a full stage with truss lights, and we had smoke and mirrors and things that vanished. When the telephone rang, the audience would ooh, but it caught people's attention. But what was a part of that process was that we had a health fair. So Lifespan Hospitals provided us with healthcare workers, and they took health histories. They did hypertension. They did blood pressure, cholesterol, and one other, diabetes. But they just didn't leave people there hanging and say, I'll get back with you. Oh, you at high risk, go out and get some help. They set it up so people could get to health care. Even women who had child care issues, they made it so they could they handled that. So you had to go that extra step to say, this was the work that wasn't just there to give you information, but to get you the help that you needed. And there was a follow-up through Brown University linguistics department where people gave them permission to follow up, and they followed up and found people they made certain lifestyle choices. They stopped smoking, or they said I'm reading labels, I'm trying to get healthier food. So all of those, so that was all a part of it. And after every show there was what we call a folk thought, where there was a doctor who was there. So we actually saved people's lives, but that started with the community, and they just came to the right place, and I wish we could do more of that, but I don't have the resources to it. But I understand, Carol, to have a space that's open and finding a way to identify the other resources within your community that can help you make it happen.
Yeah.
That's the inspiration from you.
Yeah, and in public health, public health is one of the areas that really is better financed. And so I have to tell you that along the way, we've been able to help to serve them with coming up with something different than usual for their health education. And we've been able to create art. And so the group that Adam talked with you about, Health Nuts,
Yes.
there's a piece that they do about the heart. And what they do is they wrap inside of kind of a improvisating movement, pulsating movement, a lot of information about the heart. and they tell you the size it is, and they tell you the statistics about it, and all of that, And what they do is that they talk about the whole notion of how kind of all of us are challenged around our health stuff.
Yes.
And how it is that we manage to continue to work on it, And so we have that, and then we have systems making a change, which would pick up at the point that the audience went to to your health fair.
Yes.
Well, we have them come over twice a week, and they use diasporic dance as their aerobic strategy. So they're doing everything from belly dancing to African dancing.
Wow.
Salsa, samba, line dance, second line. They become a dance company. Some of them never danced before in their lives. And then we also give them refreshments. And over the 10-year period, we move people from having meat at every meal. They now can have a meal that doesn't have meat. They eat brown rice, they eat hummus and pizza. All of that was about manipulating the culture. Giving them information and giving them an opportunity to evolve a greater consciousness. And so they're some of our best advocates for wellness. And one of the nice things that they did was that they also did a workshop to be able to start engaging their men inside of the conversation that was called Protecting the Family Jewels. And it was about prostate cancer. So the whole notion of what did you call it? You called it net weaving.
Yes.
Net weaving is really very important. The senior citizens, that's another place where they're looking for something to do with the seniors, other than taking them to the casino. So if you can come up with some options, the seniors are welcome for the attention, and the people who do senior citizen programs are welcome for an optional thing to do with them.
Micah, did you want to?
To move us into a new space, or do we want to keep going in this direction? I like where the conversation's going organically. We could open it up a little bit more. I actually am interested, Marie, to hear, because I know your collaboration with Robbie McCauley was around issues of diabetes.
Right, we're still working.
Okay.
And Robbie's piece will be presented at Arts Emerson in mid-January.
Okay.
And this is Marie Chieri. I'm one of the directors of Artists in Context, Carol. And we've been, actually, I've been working with Robbie on this piece called Sugar about the history of sugar, its production, its marketing, its relationship to worldwide capitalism, and also the prevalence of diabetes, the growing epidemic, really, and especially its prevalence among people of color. And so Robbie's been doing story circles with diabetics and health professionals in various parts of the country over the last, I would say, 5 years. And she happens to teach at Emerson College in Boston, and so we've been holding a number of story circles at community health centers like in Mattapan, Roxbury, Dorchester, and in central, well, I guess the South End, which is pretty much central Boston. And they've been difficult, challenging, not so much for, certainly the people who are sort of us, Artists in Context, who are raising money to put these on, and but for the participants, because it's, and for Robbie as well, because Robbie has been diabetic since her late teens, and just all the many, many ways that diabetes affects one's health and well-being and psychological state. It's really quite something. So Robbie has worked with lots of people from of different ages, different types of diabetes, one of the places that we've done this is at a homeless housing for formerly homeless elderly people. And we've been working with the diabetics in that particular housing situation. So Robbie has taken these stories and also done research with public health people and medical people, and is coming up with a one-woman show in January that we're also now raising money to try to provide free or low-cost tickets for, certainly for the people who participated in story circles, but also very much to bring in people to the piece and the dialogue that occurs after each performance of it, to bring them into an ever-expanding circle of dialogue. And we have one doctor and public health guy who founded something called the Foundation for Art and Healing in Boston. And he's been our greatest ally and is really helping us make inroads into the medical mentality and the medical operations in the Boston area. So it's been a really incredible experience, and I'm actually thrilled that Elmo is here because I've been meaning to contact you about maybe.
I can work with Robbie, yes, I know.
Yeah.
So you must know in the ambush. In the ambush in Florida.
I don't.
You don't know what you need to know because you graduated from Robbie. He teaches you
Oh.
now.
Oh.
But Carol, just what you have inspiring, I don't want to argue, I just want to make
Yeah.
a shout out to Micah. Also, because you got to keep me, because I lose stuff in my brain, talk about other health issues. Because when we had this kind of meeting, when we leave, we said, did we talk about it? We really talked about that, didn't we? But I want to make it that we make something happen. I was going to say, please contact them. Micah, would you be the conduit? Because there's a natural connection here with the Brown University Medical School, with the public health. I think it's something that's very doable that they would want to make happen. Because it's happening at a time when I've got a number of students who do an RPM research to performance method playwriting from the RPM around health issues. So things happen. There's power in the circle, and New Orleans is coming to us over there. Right, so I just want to say that I see something tangible coming out of this. So please talk to me after this. Michael will help us out with that.
Cool. Yeah, just thought that there was, it wasn't intentional, but I saw that coming up. And then the other thing that I'm really interested in that's coming up is this question about where the narrative exists in the art and how people connect to it. And especially when we're talking about different types of art. We're talking about dance theater, which has much less of a spoken kind of narrative thread in it, as I understand it. It's much more movement-oriented versus something that is based on oral histories or based on testimony or the story circles. And I'm wondering, Dorothy, can you speak to how the movement vocabularies that you all use translate to the folks who come to you and say, tell my story, because tell my story is the way that you framed it. And then you're not going to sit here and tell a story, you're going to dance that story.
Right.
So I'd be interested in hearing how that works.
Well, all our learning, I think I would say it's on our feet. It's how we get up and do things. And we do use words and we do use songs, so we really more think of ourselves as holistic.
Okay.
But we dance we talk through dancing. Dancing is talking and expressing yourself. For instance, right now, we were trying to do, this morning, for instance, we had 8 people, huge, what we looked for is a metaphor, or how we could physicalize the brain became our problem, and how would we do this, and right now we've got all this scaffolding in place that represents, for instance, if I could explain, we had, I don't know if you'll be able to imagine this, but there's 4 pieces of scaffolding and they're all joined up right now. And we have the amygdala talking to the frontal lobe. And the amygdala is played by Scarface.
Okay.
You know Scarface, the movie. And so this happens, you know, through partial movement, partial talk. But for instance, when the person is having a memory, they're on the operating table and they're finding the part in the brain, because the brain has all been mapped out, and certain parts represent memory, certain parts represent motor, hearing, visual, and he taps the memory, and this person remembers this wild place. And they take the scaffolding and they're whirling it around and climbing on it and moving on it and jumping on it. And some people see, okay, this is the kids whiling, this is the moment of violence, this is the, you know, the shooting or whatever. And other people see this is the brain going out of control. These are the neurons going crazy at the, you know, so it's like going on in those 2 levels. And so we ask ourselves those things like, then how do 2 scaffoldings with 4 people move around this space, and you're getting on it and off it and around it, and what are we imagining and what are we seeing there?
Yeah.
So physicalizing, it's, you know, it's our emotional memory. Our emotions live in our bodies, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's where it all comes from. So words will come out of that, but the body is what will make the emotion happen. And people go to the theater for the emotion, to feel something, to care about something, to motivate them. So that's, did that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that was a great anecdote. That makes perfect sense.
And I should introduce, sitting next to me is Clayton McFarlane, who is a wonderful mover and dancer, singer. We also have a comedy club on, thank you, on every Friday night. So that's another way that we handle stress, is by laughing. And it's as easy to laugh as to cry, and both of them are healthy. So I just wanted you to know he's here too as part of Everett.
In the time that we have left, I'd love to open it up to questions from the circle itself, or responses to perhaps a theme that was raised over tonight's presentations, the connection you'd like to make with your own work or work that you've been engaged with recently.
Well, one thing that we're doing here at this spot here at the Brew Cafe, trying to tie in with health, with people's health. And I like what everyone said about those approaches. Well, we approached the Rhode Island Blood Bank. And so we're going to have a blood drive here on Halloween. So it's going to be from 11 to 2. And what we're trying to do right now is to reach out to, we want to reach out to the community that works here during that time on their lunch break to come and give blood. We're going to set up in here. We're going to have some Draculas hanging around. But our thought is to approach Brown University, Johnson Wales, and Rhode Island College and see which college could give the most blood. And the college that gives the most blood, we'll give them an evening here at the Roots. So that's a way that we're trying to reach out and also make people conscious of how important it is to give blood.
I have a question. Have you ever run into any, I wouldn't say trouble, but sort of issues with someone feeling like their experience was misrepresented in some way? because a lot of you all are taking people's stories and representing them in different forms.
Well, no, because we have the focus groups, and we have the research, and we have the medical people. As a matter of fact, I will put up a presentation. Brown University gave Heart to Heart 12.5 continuing medical education credits for any healthcare provider that came to the play and did the questionnaire, so we didn't get any negative feedback because it was the focus group that really gave us the story, and they tracked us, you know. So we didn't just say, oh, here it is. They were with us all of it. Then they said, this is it, go. So that wasn't a focus group.
I'm trying to think.
A lot of times with Everett, the people who are doing the story are in the play, so it's hard to sort of misrepresent something if you're, helping to create it. So.
I think that's a really great question, though, because I think that perhaps one of the reasons folks haven't run into that problem is that somewhere in the fabric of the process by which the work is created, there's been a lot of thought given to that. So that comes back to, I think, sort of a methodology, right?
Yeah.
Elmore, you mentioned research and performance methodology. Dorothy, I'm sure Everett over the years you have crafted and created methods that you use in gathering
Well, we
research,
call
and that might be helpful
same
to
thing,
hear.
yeah. Oh, same thing, absolutely.
Can I just give a short shout out to my colleague Eric N. Brown, who's now the director of playwriting at Brown. And he has established the Tenderloin Opera Company that works out of the Matthewson Street Methodist Church. And they meet once a week, and I went to an event they did last spring. But basically, he's working with people who are commonly homeless or who have been homeless. And they gather in a circle like this, and they tell and they write their own stories. So it's a technique that a lot of us are using, but we need to get all of us who do it hooked up. And because the same thing you were saying is that when they did their presentation, all the people who perform are the ones who wrote them.
Just allowing for space. You
Yeah,
never know.
sometimes you just need to breathe.
I think I have a question for Carol and Adam. I also am a geographer, and so I'm kind of thinking about the distance that exists, the geographical distance between New Orleans and Providence, and wondering how it came about that there are people connected to Ashe who are involved in College Unbound. And I think it sounds like a great connection. And I just wanted to hear more about how, over time and space, how that happened.
Carol, did you hear the question?
Yeah. Well, the big answer of how we got started is serendipity. I had been asked to do a chapter in a book, and Adam was the editor. And the book got done, and when Adam happened to be in New Orleans, he passed by to say hi. I was the editor. And, we shared pleasantries and a little bit of our histories and all of that. And he told me about the fascinating story of College Unbound. And part of my history is Upward Bound and College Bound. And so it took about a week to ruminate, but in about a week I called him back and I said, well, do you think we could create an idea here? And literally that's the way it got started. He became excited, and we began writing back furiously back and forth to each other. And I talked to Gordon on my side, talked with James about the idea, because he's always a great litmus test. And then it just started being born. Adam can tell you what it was like on his side.
I think in a lot of ways I was following Carol's lead and excited for the opportunity for that. I had known of her work and of Ashe for years before, and played you a clip of that community sing, which was our first sort of reintroduction. That was on day 2 of a trip, and we met again on day 8. So it was those like 6 days later that that other conversation where the idea of College Unbound based at Ashe happened. But I think it also says a lot about the environment of Ashe and the generosity of spirit of Carol, and of being of creating a space that is accessible for those ideas to germinate, and for them to have legs even when there's distance between them. I think a lot of what this conversation has been about is creating space for listening and for creative practice, and that can happen even when there's an airplane ride apart. I think speaks to who your partners are in that process, and how you do this net weaving. We each had networks with which to work, and so we kind of left that day and went off and did homework on through our sides. And it was a month later that I went back to New Orleans, and we sort of got together again, and we've sort of made a commitment to imagine together.
Well, I think it also illustrates something about, especially in being administrators of things, to not get set in certain conventional ways of doing things, and to make that sort of imaginative leap. Like, yeah, what a great program. How can I connect with that? Okay, there's a lot of distance and cultural differences, but why not? I like the leap.
Yeah, no, I think we were both at a stage where we wanted to leap together, and Carol, in just other parts of that conversation, talked about having had that on her mind since 2007 when she did a trip to South Africa. Isn't that right, Carol, 2007?
Right.
Yeah, where they had a distance learning program that she had thought about connecting with, and then that never really took off. And myself, and really thinking about really a collective energy around pursuing higher education, was really not necessarily finding that in what we were doing here. That we were creating great conditions for individuals to pursue degrees, and that there was something lacking out of that. And I think it was both of those kind of coming together through what Ashe had allowed space for.
And then we had we've got a collection of others here that kind of support the work on our end. And like a third member of our core team is Patrice Godwin, who was up there last week or the week before. And she runs Black Literacy Center. And she has a really keen interest in looking at this model, because the viability of it is very transferable to really opening the window of opportunity for people who have dropped out of school, got GEDs, and feel like college is not anywhere on their landscape. And so the potential for this to wind up being something that could impact on that level as well is something we're already thinking about. And then we've got PhDs from several universities that are working with us as adjunct faculty as well in New Orleans. And they're doing They're doing occasional lecturing and participating in the classes and all. So it is it's a very creative process. It's a very creative process, and because we're kind of doing it as we go along this time. And this semester especially has been about really making certain that the student body that we have and the faculty that we have, you know, and the kind of the guidance that we're able to provide is sufficient to be able to kind of nurture this, you know, to the end. And I think we're pretty comfortable that we don't have too much. And there is just enough of a challenge to keep it interesting.
Yeah, I mean, so the students are enrolled right now in one class, as we're sort of using this as a mini semester, and starting full-time in January. So to give a chance for really everyone to make time for this in the right ways in their life. But students started meeting every 2 weeks starting last January on their own to talk about what they wanted out of this college program. And Carol started meeting with the advisory board of Ashe to talk about what it would mean to graduate with a degree from Ashe College Unbound at Roger Williams. So what the organization needed from this. And so there were a lot of really moving pieces that were people really saying what this needed to be. And you know, the strongest academic department in all of New Orleans, in my opinion, is the advisory board and sort of learning partners at Ashe. Like the best, my favorite people from all around the city are all there. So why not build something at that point of convergence, right? That it makes the most sense out of anything. So there's some common sense to it too. Like why not if the infrastructure could be there?
And then we were convinced when the dean decided to come down last December and make a quick visit. He just kind of showed up with Adam like almost overnight, and wanted to, you know, really talk to the board. And then I realized that there was some energy happening at Roger Williams too, you know, and then that really gave us energy because it didn't feel like you were going up the hill by yourself. And then pieces have just fallen into place. Now we're getting ready to we found a potential funder for an IDA program that's going to generate about $4,000 a person to be able to help to pay for it. And so, you know, things are just kind of starting to fall in place.
Carol, we're going to have to wrap up here, but I know Dorothy wanted to ask a question.
Oh, I wanted to ask Adam. The part I didn't understand is you're on the staff at Roger Williams College. I didn't get that at first. So that's how that.
So the relationship, so College Unbound grew out of Big Picture Learning, which is a nonprofit based here in Providence, where we designed the College Unbound curriculum and then sought out institutional partners. So Roger Williams accepted the College Unbound curriculum model as something that could advance towards a bachelor's degree. So then we can accept students and really design individualized student curriculum. So then Carol approached College Unbound to approach Roger Williams to make that.
Because those are the things on my mind too, you know, exactly the kids, the youth that are doing college work, not getting credit for it, thinking we always called it our own, we were each other's grad school. Really, you know, I mean, that's what was going on, but to legitimize it and through a big picture, that's fascinating. I got it. Yeah.
So to borrow a phrase that Adam just used, this has been a wonderful point of convergence right here, right? And thank you, Carol, for joining us.
Oh my God, I'm happy I could manage to be there, yeah.
And thank you, Micah and Jory and Mari for convening and curating this evening and all of today. And thank you all of us for joining us.